The PS2 was the console that arguably pioneered the hack and slash and character action genres for the generations to come, with massive hits like Devil May Cry, God Hand, God of War, Prince of Persia, and more. Arguably though, and in the case of one of the games mentioned above, factually the whole genre was pioneered by one game, Onimusha. With a whopping 4 games released on one generation of consoles, Onimusha made a huge impact on the gaming scene when it first debuted, but like most games we feature in the series, it seemed to disappear off the face of the earth not long afterwards. Today we're asking the question, will we ever see a new Onimusha game? Before then though, if you could smash the like and then like the subscribe, we promise to take Japanese lessons to not murder some of these pronunciations so hard next time. We can only apologise in advance. The development of the first Onimusha game, particularly in its inception, is quite the famous story already, at least in terms of the legacy it spawned. The concept for Onimusha Warlords emerged in 1997 as it was based on the idea of Capcom designer Yoshiki Okamoto, who wanted to create a Sengoku-era Resident Evil game, complete with a ninja house filled with various booby traps and gimmicks. Players would fight monsters and demons using katanas and shuriken rather than guns and grenades. In Okamoto's vision of the game, Onimusha Warlords was planned for the Nintendo 64DD, the disk drive version of Nintendo's famous console, and also that rare version of a Double D that didn't excite teenage boys in Japan as nobody bought the thing. However, development began on the original PlayStation before then being switched once again to the PS2. The original PlayStation version was never released, but gameplay trailers for that initial version are available to watch online. It's actually what you're watching on screen right now, and it looks pretty neat, right? In an interview with PSX Extreme, legendary developer and Warlords producer Keiji Inafune clarified the game's development process, stating, "Onimusha was not originally developed for N64, it was originally developed for PS1. I wanted to release this game on the best system available. When PlayStation 2 was announced, I was very excited about it and shifted the project to PS2. The full game launched in 2001, with a plot focused around real-life figure Nobunaga Oda. You play as the warrior Samanosuke, who is summoned to Inabayama Castle to try and prevent some evildoers from reviving a villainous Nobunaga. Also, there's a bunch of demons running around the place, so you're given some magical assistance to ensure your head doesn't get stomped. Fighting these demons is where the more famous development story comes from. Initially, a bug with the melee combat meant that demons were being juggled by attacks. It didn't fit the style of the game Onimusha was, but the designers found it to be entertaining and tried it in the then prototype for Resident Evil 4. That game would go on to become Devil May Cry, with Hideki Kamiya himself implementing the glitch that became an intended mechanic. Given the other famous story about the combos in Street Fighter being an accident, Capcom have decent luck when it comes to just fluking their way into fantastic game mechanics. Digression aside, Onimusha Warlords would prove to be a success for Capcom, selling over 2 million copies worldwide, and over 1 million alone in Japan. Critically, Onimusha Warlords did pretty well for itself too, earning a Metacritic score of 86. That level of success as an early PS2 title practically warranted a sequel, but it was also ported to the original Xbox in 2002 as Genma Onimusha, which included enhancements to pretty much every aspect of the game, including new areas, attacks, and a new boss fight. Onimusha 2 Samurai's Destiny launched in 2002, which is a quick turnaround for a sequel, but as we learned from the Dino Crisis deep dive, quick turnarounds were common for Capcom back then. Still, it also helped that Capcom were developing the sequel at the same time as the original game, meaning Capcom had complete faith in the game's ability to succeed before it even launched. Capcom reportedly has enough faith that Onimusha was planned to be a trilogy, according to Keiji Inafune when speaking to OneUp.com. That doesn't mean the sequel wasn't a bold step for the series. While retaining a lot of the same core gameplay, Samurai's Destiny featured a brand new protagonist in the form of Jubi Yagyu, a samurai with Oni heritage who goes on an adventure across feudal Japan to stop Nobunaga's potential reign of terror. Along the way, you meet other warriors with whom you can interact and form relationships with, which is critical to ensuring that they don't abandon you when the demons hit the fan. It's a bit like Mass Effect before Mass Effect, only with ninjas and samurai. Yes, that's as awesome as it sounds. Leave a comment below if you want to see a sexy samurai Mass Effect game. I expect 1 million comments. This focus on dramatic storytelling over pure action was a conscious decision by developers, and one that ultimately paid off, as Onimusha 2 ended up being just as successful as the original game. Samurai's Destiny earned an 84 on Metacritic, and in the same listing as the first Onimusha linked above, it's reported that the second game managed to hit 2 million copies, although just barely. However, it's been noted that reception to the sequel in Europe was muted at best, meaning that the third game was altered in order to better appeal to European games. How do you do that? Jean Reno himself was cast in Onimusha 3 Demon Siege as Jacques Blanc, a present-day police officer who switches places with the game's original protagonist, Samanosuke, with Jack sent to Japan, while Samanosuke finds himself in Paris. Side note, Jacques Blanc seems like the most stereotypically French name you could come up with, but that's a whole other basket of baguettes. In the same interview with OneUp.com, Keiji Inafune goes into detail about the decision to set the game in Paris. We were originally thinking of either New York or Paris. We wanted a contrast between ancient Japan and another city. Team thought, well, New York would be cool. Here's this samurai running through New York surrounded by skyscrapers. But when we looked at the games that were out at the time, very few games used a European backdrop. You see New York in a lot of different games, so we wanted to take the road less travelled. Also, Onimusha 2 sold the worst in Europe. We felt like that's where we lost the war, so it was a key place we wanted to focus the third on. The Mean John Machine's role in the game was more than just a facial scan and voiceover though, as Capcom brought him in to do motion capture work for the cutscenes and other animations. Motion capture and CG movies were one of the biggest elements during the development of Onimusha 3, with the team even bringing on acclaimed martial artist Donnie Yen to assist with the game's development. While Onimusha 3 was designed to appeal more to Western gamers, the sales outside of Japan didn't quite stack up, with the game debuting at number 10 in the US charts when it launched. Onimusha 3 was by no means a failure though, as it managed to accrue lifetime sales of 1.52 million and achieved a Metacritic score of 85. Onimusha 3 would even inspire others, with Shinji Mikami adopting an over-the-shoulder camera in RE4 in response to playing Onimusha 3, which didn't seem like a compliment. The graphical engine would even go on to become the basis for the criminally underrated Shadow of Rome, with Yoshinori Ono remarking in an interview with IGN about how Onimusha 3 pushed the PS2's capabilities. The graphics engine for Onimusha 3 pushed the PS2 hardware to its limits, so for Shadow of Rome we challenged ourselves to maintain as much of the Onimusha 3 quality while injecting the dynamics of Shadow of Rome's action, battle and stealth portions where the user can move the camera around at will. Our CG designer in Studio 2 really knew the engine inside and out, so we took this engine that pushes the PS2 hardware to its limits and planned a completely different game around it. Re-releases and spin-offs aside, the vast main entry in the Onimusha series was Dawn of Dreams in 2006, which saw the series return to Japan fully. No trips to the future this time. Despite being billed as a trilogy, the first 3 Onimusha games were designed to close out the Nobunaga saga of the series, with a new villain and protagonist introduced in its 4th entry. The numerous fan requests for a new game were also hard to ignore. The game also opted for a more action-orientated gameplay style, changing the fixed camera perspective to a controller camera that defaulted to behind the player character, Soki. Rather than just opting to create a new game in the series, Capcom saw Dawn of Dreams as a chance to make a new start for the series. When speaking to Eurogamer in 2006, Yoshinori Ono said, "We wanted to overhaul the gameplay and make a brand new game. So rather than just extending the Onimusha trilogy, we came up with a brand new Onimusha franchise. That's why there's no number in the title. We didn't want to use the name Onimusha 4 because we've changed the game model completely and this is a new chapter, a new dawn." Unfortunately, that new chapter would just turn out to be an epilogue for the game series, as Onimusha Dawn of Dreams failed to become a commercial success, even despite the generally positive reviews the game received. In that year's fiscal reports, Capcom singled out Dawn of Dreams alongside other games like Beatdown Fists of Vengeance, which was a trash tier game in fairness, as games that underperformed and struggled. It is possible that this could have been due to the release of the Xbox 360, which happened around the same time and potentially overshadowed the launch of a last generation exclusive game. Capcom's VP of Strategic Planning and Business Development, Christian Svensson, spoke to IGN in 2018 to discuss the franchise's commercial outings, stating, "When you look at the timing and sales trend of how Onimusha has gone each outing, I won't give you the exact numbers, but let's just say that every outing subsequently has been about 60% of the prior. The brand doesn't right now have quite the resilience you might think. While Onimusha 1 and Onimusha 2 are among our more successful titles, Onimusha 3 and Onimusha Dawn of Dreams, not so much." Weirdly though, Dawn of Dreams might have had the most lasting impact out of all the games in other media, with 2 manga tie-ins, Twilight of Desire and Night of Genesis Volumes 1 and 2, published by Udon Entertainment, that were designed to flesh out the game's story. It was even given a film adaptation, which compiled the game's CG cutscenes along with some new ones to tell the game's story from another character's perspective. So, will Capcom, or maybe someone else, ever make a new Onimusha? We think Capcom wouldn't be opposed to making it. Certainly they're more open to the idea of a new Onimusha game than a Dino Crisis one, if you consider that Onimusha Warlords was given the HD remaster treatment for PC, PS4, Xbox One and Nintendo Switch in 2019. The Warlords remaster was certainly well received by fans of the series, though many reviewers noted that the game had aged considerably in the near 2 decades between releases. We should also consider the current gaming landscape, as samurai and ninjas are, to quote Mugatu, so hot right now. The likes of Sekiro, Nioh, Ghost of Tsushima, and to a lesser extent but still valid, the Samurai Showdown reboot have given the medium a bigger spotlight to shine, and they certainly have. Ghost of Tsushima alone has proved to be an incredible success for Sony and Sucker Punch, so maybe that'll spring Capcom to life and revisit Onimusha. In that same interview with IGN, Christian Svensson gave a reason as to why Capcom hadn't released a new game in the series yet. "I don't know that internally there's, on the creative side, massive fire to say, I now have to fix that and reboot that and make that huge again. For the time being, I think it's in percolate mode. That is to say, it's not forgotten internally, there are discussions that go on, but I don't think anyone has sort of come up with the that's it idea of how to get the game back up to 3 or 4 million units. Of course, this was before the Warlords remaster, which he would also go on to tease. You may see some things on the brand pop up in future. I can't say what, but there are certainly discussions about it. In recent years though, Capcom have risen to new heights while following 2 key development strategies. Firstly, they've taken their cult franchises and brought them mainstream success. Just look at how the Monster Hunter series has exploded following the release of Monster Hunter World, Iceborne and Rise. Secondly, they've raided their back catalogue to create extensive, rewarding and brilliant remakes of their classic games. The remakes of Resident Evil 2 and, to a lesser extent, Resident Evil 3 have both modernised and repopularised some vintage games. The work Capcom have put into developing the RE engine, their graphical and animation engine and successor to MT Framework, has led to the creation of some fantastic looking games, including every RE game after 7, Devil May Cry 5, Monster Hunter Rise and the upcoming Pragmata. There's no reason to believe that a modern remake of Onimusha in RE engine wouldn't look like the greatest samurai game ever made. We also have to consider the unfortunate ransomware attack from 2020 that led to a lot of Capcom's upcoming game release strategy being leaked, and Onimusha was included as part of it. Codenamed New Work, this mysterious Onimusha project is supposedly slated for release in Q4 2022. New Work potentially suggests that this could be a remake of the first game or a full-blown reboot. IGN themselves have gone on record to say that they've verified a decent chunk of the games noted are legitimate, but interestingly, Onimusha isn't listed among the biggest games named in the leak. Their list includes multiple Resident Evil games, Street Fighter 6 and subsequent re-releases, a new Monster Hunter, Dragon's Dogma 2, and remakes for Final Fight and Power Stone, and yet there's no Onimusha. Whether this is an oversight on IGN's part or their confirmation through omission that the Onimusha leak is either inaccurate or unverifiable is unclear, but it casts doubt on the status of a new Onimusha all the same. Again, we have to fall back to Christian's statement in the IGN interview. A new Onimusha game depends on Capcom's willingness to return to the franchise, which they definitely aren't opposed to considering they were already working on the Warlords remaster. After the runaway success of Resident Evil and Monster Hunter though, and the recent surge of popularity for samurai games, perhaps Capcom would be more open to returning to the Sengoku era.